back with Mistral by Sash Games, and we are just coming to the end of spring 1742. The upcoming turn will be turn 8, so that will be halfway through the year, going into the summer months. Very quiet start to the year, 1742. Neither side has even completed an order, so the orders fulfilled on both sides since steadfastly at 0. However, the Bourbon player is a move away from getting this formation back into Barcelona and completing a cruise of the Spanish coast. And I suppose this French fleet here, this French formation here, is probably 2/3 of the way around a lap of Corsica and Sardinia, and so we'll soon complete a second order for the Bourbon player. That is likely to happen this turn. Over on the British side, they have a formation over here approaching Venice. This is quite a long trip because all the wind's blown the wrong direction to get to Venice, so they will probably get their late turn and then have to spend next turn actually stationed there to fulfill their order. So they're probably a turn and a half away, maybe close to 2 turns from fulfilling an order. And that's, I think, the only one that the British have in play at the moment. But the British have committed, the British side has committed to perhaps a course of action for the summer, which the Bourbon player haven't yet. So they've gotten into the Straits of Messina, which was a random draw. They didn't choose that, but the Straits of Messina are down here. So they figured that maybe this chap, having blockaded Venice and bombarded it with its bomb ship, could drop into the Straits of Messina and do that for perhaps the rest of the summer and fulfill that order. They've got Show of Force Naples. That was one they chose. So they want to influence the ground war in the Po Valley and the Apennines. That will help do that. And they also figured that if they could rock up at Naples with a big, well-fitted out fleet, they could probably blockade in this quite dangerous, small but dangerous Neapolitan navy and stop it from doing anything, and certainly stop it from combining with the Spanish fleet, which has made its way to Cadiz and is slowly but steadily being repaired. So they have thought, actually what they'll do for the summer is blockade Naples and make it clear to the Neapolitans that their joining of the Bourbon cause was not appreciated. And then I think this was the random pip that they had to take in order to get that Show of Force Naples, and they got through Spanish coast, which they're reckoning they might just be able to nip a squadron out of Port Mahon over to Barcelona and look like they're heading to Gibraltar and then duck past to Cadiz and turn around and come back. So that's the plan for that. So they have got plans for the fulfilling of all 3 of these orders. The Bourbon player is about to fulfill 2 this turn and then think about what orders they want next, and they kind of wanted to see how their repairs on their main fleet went. They have got a troop ship, a troop convoy, but it's already left Barcelona, and I've checked, and you can't issue escort. You can issue escort orders, but not to auxiliaries. So if you can try and escort, but it's quite complicated. You have to go out on the spot and stuff. They probably let that troop ship just make its own way over to the Italian coast, or that troop convoy, and then maybe try and escort the next one, which actually I think in my version of the game is due to appear this turn. So the troop convoys can either appear around at player choice, or you can follow a historical schedule and then at player choice. I found that the historical schedule was only supplied I saw the designer answer a question on Board Game Geek because I couldn't find it in any of the books anywhere. And it didn't make much sense to me, to be honest, because although I'm sure it was completely historically correct in terms of the gameplay, what these troop convoys do is allow you to influence the military campaigns up here, which are both currently tilting slightly in the Austrian favour. However, the historical departure dates given by the designer would have seen the troop convoys headed to Italy before those campaigns could possibly have been underway. And then they couldn't influence them, which seemed a bit of a shame. It seemed like it was sort of stiffing the Bourbon players slightly by doing that, giving them troop convoys that can be sunk by the British and achieve nothing when they get there. Seemed a little bit a bit unfortunate. So I've moved these troop convoys back to the spring. The Bourbon player gets to launch 3 in this year, and then I think just 1 in subsequent years. So I moved them to turns 5, 8 and 11 on the basis that by then the Apennine and Po Valley military campaigns were at least pretty one of them was guaranteed to be underway, and so the troop convoys would be useful, and it could be that both of them were underway and they'd be useful. So that was my thinking. So the second troop convoy will appear in turn 8 and the third in turn 11, which is some way into the summer here. So I thought I'd just spread them out but turns 5, 8 and 11, but make them a set thing in 42, and then from 43 onwards the Bourbon player can have 1 but choose when to launch it. So in terms of sort of big naval battles, well, we've certainly not had any of those because, like I say, the Bourbon player has moved most of his Spanish fleet to Cadiz for repair. The French and British aren't at war, and the British actually haven't left Gibraltar yet because they've also been waiting for their victualling convoy to provide enough repair points to mend their fleet up. So they are waiting on that to happen before they head first to Port Mahon and then on to Naples to complete their show of force orders. One thing I will point out, maybe now, maybe later, no, I'll mention it now, is I was talking about this formation going up to complete its order at Venice, and then maybe being able to interdict these straits. One of the reasons that's only a maybe is because once something's in its ready state, i.e. not sitting in port, your fleet admiral has to make a skill check or a strategy check in order to give a formation orders. So Haddock over here would need to roll a 3 or less to give that formation orders while it's at sea. And this creates a really interesting tension in the game, because if you leave port with orders, you have to use what's called the most the most expeditious route to get to your target, and that means the quickest in movement points, and that doesn't allow you to avoid enemy formations or gales or other dangerous things. So, for example, these guys are under orders to get to Venice, and they have to do it as quickly as possible. If there are a fleet lurking, waiting to try and engage them in battle, they're not allowed to detour around it or try and play games with it. They simply have to continue on their orders, and if they end up in a battle, that's too bad. Similarly, if a hurricane force wind breaks out, they're not allowed to avoid that either. That's just too bad. So you can give orders in port, and they're guaranteed to get those orders, but there are risks involved in leaving port with orders that then lock you into a route, whereas you can send ships out with no orders and rely on being able to give them orders while they're at sea, and you have a lot more flexibility in where you go, but you're relying on the die rolls. It's another point of tension, another point of decision in the game, which is really interesting. So I thought I'd mention it. I should probably have given it its own segment, but there it is. I'm in the events phase of the summer quarterly turn of
1742 here in Mistral, Red Sash Games. Just about to roll the military campaigns for the quarter. Well, actually, they're rolled every turn, but including this one. So, yeah, we've got the Apennines and Po Valley military campaigns to roll, and I was just highlighting that the British had completed this show of force order with an attached bomb ship, and that's giving a +6 on the dice roll for that Po Valley military campaign, represented by the green dice here. So I'm just going to give these a roll. The brown dice is the Apennines campaign, the green dice is the Po Valley campaign, to see what we get here. So we've got 9. Okay, that's very good for the Austrians. So the +6 makes that a 15. Yeah, that's pretty comprehensive. So over here, a 9 will move this in favour of the Austrians 1 spot, and the 15 will move this 1 spot in favour of the Austrians as well. So that's the military campaigning done for this turn, but that's done every turn rather than quarterly. It's bounced backwards and forwards, so troop ship moved it. One of them had shifted Austrian and bounced back because of a troop ship arrival, and one of them went Austrian and then back the other way and back towards the Bourbons. But now they're both tilting Austrian again. Now we take that bomb ship and orders chit off Venice, and carry on with the administration phase. None of the other events that could have occurred happened. So trouble in the West Indies, the Flotta didn't happen. Nothing happening with the Corsican insurgency. So yeah, now we're back onto the standard run of reinforcements, reorganisation, and so on. It's midsummer in 1742 here in Mistral, Red Sash Games. This is the July-August turn, so turn 10, the second turn of the summer season. We are in Impulse 2 at the start of movement point increment 3. Yes, and there's lots of stuff moving around the Mediterranean at the moment. The weather's great, and both sides are trying to get stuff done with as little fuss or force required as possible. But here we have 2 formations off the coast of Italy that look like they're about to run into each other. Just a wider picture, we've got some British and Bourbon forces here in the Balearic Gulf de Lion? Balearic, yes, Gulf de Lion. But these had sailed out of Toulon. The British figured they were French and couldn't interact with them particularly usefully, and likewise the French knew they couldn't attack the British, and they sailed on by each other without taking much interest. We've got some sort of formation here in the Barbary coast. That's in here. We've got British sailing along the coast of North Africa doing something, coming out the coast of Spain doing something. We've got a Bourbon fleet formation out over at Salé. We've got something moving around here off the coast of Palermo. So there's lots of stuff moving around, but over here are actual formations about to run into each other. So this is a British formation returning from bombarding Venice, and this is the fleet that's come out of Naples and is actually it has orders to head and help the Bourbons in their Apennines campaign, which means spending some time up at this location H. You probably can't quite see it, but anyway, it's over here, not quite as far as Venice, which is further up there. So these look like they're going to run into each other. The Bourbon player doesn't actually have any control as to where that fleet moves, because it has to move to its target location as quickly as possible. The British are no longer under orders. They've completed their orders and can move away, but they've got nowhere to move to. Well, they could turn around and start running away this way, but are they going to do that? Probably not. So we have a bit of a flashpoint there. Now, the start of the movement point increment is when you can conduct searches. So this is range 2, and you can search your own location with a formation, or you can assign auxiliaries to search further afield, but they can be screened and they can fail. Well, you can fail in your own location as well, but anyway, that's besides the point. So what should happen here is that one player announces that they're searching and then allocates auxiliaries, and the other player may choose in secret to screen with something or not. We happen to know that this light auxiliary can just go in here and search, but we would assign that to searching. The British player doesn't have any auxiliaries in that formation and therefore can't screen, and so we've just got a search going on here for the British formation before we put any movement markers down or choose moves. So on this table over here, the search table, you roll a d10. You've got some chance of finding things and being able to shadow them, or not shadow them, or just not finding them at all. You've got some modifiers here, which this one applies because there's one target squadron, so we've got a -1 on the dice roll. So we're just going to roll the d10, see where we end up. Sorry about that. Okay, we've got a 1, -1. We've got a 0. We have successfully searched for that formation, and so it's flipped up to show that it's spotted. This goes into the recovery box up over here because it's now been used, and that being spotted means we can ask what's in there and be told that there's a single squadron and no auxiliaries. And now we plot moves. And how this works is you basically use the rules assign one side as player A and the other side player B, and in this game the Bourbon player is always player A. And the way I do this, I'm not quite sure whether this is exactly how the rules do it, but to avoid having to do plotted movement, what we get are loads of these directional markers, and you can pop them down under your formation to show where it's going. So one side, in this case the Bourbon player, chooses where all his formations are going to go and pops those markers down under the formation and covers them back up again, and then the British player just moves, and then the Bourbon player carries out his pre-plotted moves. So it means that one side can pre-plot sort of increment by increment, and then the other side just moves, and then the first side has to conduct his order. So neither side knows what the other's doing, and they're both acting blind essentially, because you have to guess what your opponent's up to. So that's the way this works on an increment by increment basis, and I pretty much do it. I've been doing it this turn, although it's a little bit slower than just moving everything around. It does force me, as the player of both sides, to think carefully about what's going on, to think carefully about how, if I've got dummies around, I represent them going about the business of looking like they've got orders rather than just loitering around not doing anything. So yeah, that's what we're doing here. So in this case, because this Bourbon formation, despite the presence of the enemy, that doesn't matter. The fact it's got orders to get up over here means it has to follow those orders. If this was 8 squadrons, they'd still have to go. But they are moving in this direction, so we pop that down. I do the rest of the Bourbon moves, and then I move the British. I think the British are going to come down into that space, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because we might well get a battle there. So let me pop down the rest of the Bourbon moves off camera, do the British moves, do the Bourbon moves, and I'll come back. Okay, we've got the potential for a battle here off the coast of Sicily between the Neapolitan fleet and a small British squadron. the British squadron is under the command of Captain Byng, and the Neapolitan fleet is under the commander of the Spanish Fleet Command Admiral, who is Francesco Liano, not a very capable commander. Neither's Byng, actually, so who knows how this goes down. Anyway, the Neapolitans have found the British with their light auxiliary. We saw that, but as an aside, that role was good enough that they could have also shadowed the British fleet now, or the British formation. Now, shadowing means that after your opponent has moved or chosen his move, depending on how you're using the movement markers, you can alter your move in response. So it means that you're not committed to your move, that you can respond to them. So essentially, when they move, you can move after them and keep following them. But in this instance, because the Bourbon fleet has orders to head up towards Venice, we didn't see much point in doing that, because we really couldn't change our move, because we still need to keep heading towards Venice under our orders. So we're not shadowing, but we are trying to battle. So let's run through the steps of the battle and see where we get to, and engaging things, like actually getting things into combat in this game is proving extremely difficult, and I think that's very realistic. Naval battles in this period were not happening every week. They were extremely rare events. I think partly because it's so difficult to engage, but because one side or the other always has a choice to try not to engage, and once they choose not to, it's very hard to catch them. And of course, if you're the side looking at like you're at a disadvantage, you're going to try and choose not to engage, aren't you? So trying to get a fight where you both have the opponent cornered and have the advantage in the actual battle, quite difficult to engineer. And this game reflects that. Anyway, I'm waffling. We have the British formation, the Bourbon formation. Let's run through the battle steps and see what happens here. So the first thing we do is determine if a battle can take place. That means that we both need to be in the same space, one of the formations spotted. Both those things are true, we can have a battle. Pause the impulse. So we are at the end of movement point increment 3. So it says battle occur at the end of each MPI. We are at the end of MPI 3. Announce initial engaged formations. Well, we only have one formation in each side. We have Detachment C from the British point of view and Flotilla A from the Bourbon point of view. Determine the weather gauge. Okay, this is interesting. So on the weather gauge chart, which I think we have looked at before, what we're going to see is base chance of having the wind gauge, or it's called both the wind gauge and the weather gauge, but it's the same thing, we have to assume, because there is no wind gauge chart. Having the weather gauge, right, so both sides have a base 10. Both sides, interestingly, approached with the wind into this space. If we take these off, I don't know if this will show up particularly well on camera, but from the Straits of Messina, where the Napolese fleet, where you can see they're coming with the chevrons, so they're approaching with the wind, but also the British who were here coming down these chevrons were also approaching with the wind. So both sides in an unusual situation of approaching with the wind. So that puts both sides on an 8. Neither side has 5 movement allowance, they're both on 4s. Any squadron with damage points over 2/3 of its damage rating. Now the British are very close to that, but not over it. So this British have a damage rating of 10, and their damage points are 6, but they're not over 2/3. 7 would be over 2/3, 6 is not. So they don't lose a point on the weather gauge, wind gauge for that. The Neapolitan fleet is brand new out of
port and has 2 DPs on it out of a total of 14, so they're way off. But neither side falling foul of damage. Galley formations in straits or port spaces, we don't have that. So formations leadership rating. Well, Bing has a frankly terrible 2, and Liano has an equally terrible 2. That puts both sides back on 10 on the weather rating. It says in the rare cases where there's a tie, roll the dice for each side, and the lower roll has the weather gauge. So at this point, both sides are going to roll a dice. I'll roll a red dice for the British and a yellow dice for the Naples fleet. In fact, we'll roll a white dice for the Naples fleet. And low rolls in this are generally better, so lower roll wins the weather gauge. Okay. The British with a 2 have the wind gauge, weather gauge, and that means that they can choose what to do now. That technically, because they were trying to battle this flotilla, is spotted, and the British can ask what's in there, find out that there's 2 squadrons, 3 auxiliaries in there. Timid Bing decides he wants no part of it, and will decline battle. And like I say, there we go. You turn up with 2 squadrons, all your auxiliaries ready to find the enemy, find them, still can't bring them to battle. So yeah, I'm not going to get to show you a battle in this instance because the Bourbon player wasn't able to establish the wind gauge and actually get into combat, and the British are going to run away, presumably down here towards the Maltese roads and round Sicily. They can do that because the Bourbon player approached from this direction, so they couldn't retreat or withdraw in that direction, but they can withdraw down in this direction, and the flotilla won't be shadowing because it's got orders to go somewhere else. So if that flotilla were free to move, then it could continue shadowing and continuing trying to engage. So you could engage in a sort of multi-stage operation to try and bring the opposing ships to battle, but Flotilla A has other things to do for the Bourbons, and so is going to go off and do them. Which brings me, I suppose, to the final point, in that the British have here in the Gulf de Lion a flotilla of their own, and that also has a couple of pretty much undamaged squadrons and 3 or 4 auxiliaries under the command of the reasonably competent, actually, well, he looks competent against Liano. I was slagging him off earlier, Nicholas Haddock. He's got a 4 leadership rating, so when it comes to actually getting into battle, he'd be quite good at getting the wind gauge. 433, he's not a great strategist, but he's a decent tactical admiral, and he has got, you know, some fleet auxiliaries and other things, and a couple of squadrons in good shape. And I've done this sort of fairly deliberately with the British to have a sort of firefighting force. I've changed sort of tack, and I'm sending very, very small forces off to do the orders and keeping a sort of fighting force at the ready somewhere central to send off once we've established what's going on and try and bring some Spanish ships to battle. So what's going to happen now from the British point of view is Haddock, having got wind of where the Naples fleet is going to start heading in that direction to see if he can hunt it down. But that's for the future. For now, we almost got a battle, but we didn't quite.